Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives
from Southeast Asia. Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Grace.
And of course, you are with us on our very beautiful Monday Morning Matters. So, today we are going to talk about climate change. And not just climate change. There's an important conference that will be happening in Paris very soon. And this conference would actually somehow pave the way towards how global society, especially countries, are going to commit towards reducing carbon emission, trying to focus more on environmental preservation, as well as trying to tackle the issue of climate change in general. With me is Damien Syed. I hope I pronounced the name right. He's the first secretary of the Embassy of France in Malaysia. Welcome to the studio.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, thank you for your invitation. So it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
It's a pleasure to be to have you in the our studio. So tell us more about why the French embassy is committed towards trying to promote the issue of climate change or the awareness of it.
Well, as you mentioned, this year we have a very important conference to be held in Paris from the 30 November to 11 December. It will be a crucial deadline for fighting climate change. Maybe I could just recall the background. This conference is a United Nations conference. It will involve all the countries of the world.
All countries of the world.
195 countries.
Wow.
So it's a lot.
So it's a big deal. Right after, I think the last time we had the Kyoto Protocol in Japan.
Exactly.
Now we are moving forward to the next era of discourse on climate change.
True.
So tell us more about what is happening or what will be happening at the United Nations Conference for Climate Change.
You mentioned the Kyoto Protocol. It's a very important text. Just before the Kyoto Protocol, you had the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC. It was adopted in 1992 in Rio. It was the first convention on climate change. It was it is even today the overall framework for intergovernmental efforts to tackle the challenge of climate change. And you also have indeed the Kyoto Protocol was signed in 1997.
Although they have some political, I guess, issues there when it comes to countries that choose not to sign or choose to sign.
Exactly. It came into force this protocol in 2005, but you're right. It was not a universal agreement. Actually, only developed countries took commitments to reduce greenhouse gases emissions at that time. The developing countries were only invited to make efforts on a voluntary basis. Only developed countries are the mandatory obligations to reduce their emissions. But later on, some important developed countries withdrew from this protocol. So it was a real disappointment for fighting climate change, and it was it impeded it as it was a real obstacle to advance, to move forward. So this Kyoto Protocol separates clearly developed countries, developing countries. There is a cornerstone which is the common but common but differentiated responsibilities between countries. So as you see, it was almost 20 years ago. The world has changed. Today, developing countries have emerged as real economic powers. So the Kyoto Protocol is no longer relevant in today's world.
The power dynamics has changed as well.
Yes, absolutely. And the protocol, the commitment period of the protocol, of the Kyoto Protocol, comes to an end in 2020. So we have to prepare the period after 2020. What will be the new text, internationally binding, to replace the Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol was very important, and because it has set the first targets to reduce emissions, but only on developed countries who had the burden, who had the principal responsibility. But now, in 2015, we have to prepare a new agreement. It was decided so every year, within the United Nations, UNFCCC, you have a COP. COP is Convention of Parties to the United Nations Convention. Every year to assess, to evaluate the progress made in fighting carbon emission and climate change. But this year is very important. It's very crucial because it has been decided many years ago, 4 years ago in Durban, to have a new agreement, universal agreement, legally binding, to tackle the challenge of climate change. That's why Paris Conference is really important.
I want to go back in time, just a couple of years ago in Rio, because you mentioned the earliest commitment was in Rio in 1992. And I want to go back in 2012, where they had a Rio +20 that was trying to it was a conference trying to go back to Rio, the original Rio conference, and trying to see how much we have actually gained and where are we going from there. But it seems like a lot of civil societies and a lot of governments see it's really hard to move forward the conversation on climate change, even though there's a lot of huge conference trying to advocate for it. Why is that so?
You know, it's very challenging because what is at stake is our social and economic model. It is not easy to change habits. It will be a long way to go. We know it will be gradual. It requires efforts, measures from everyone, not only governments. Until a few years ago, it was strictly limited governmental process, and we have seen it didn't work. We have in mind, for instance, the COP in Copenhagen in 2009. It has enabled some progress, but on the other hand, it didn't deliver as much as we wanted because of real deep divides between countries, developed and developing countries, but also among developed countries. At that time, for instance, United States, the second emitters of carbon emissions in the world after China, was not engaged at all in this process. It has changed its policy because the political will is essential, and now we have seen America. President Obama has made very encouraging announcements, and even China with America last year announced a deal, an agreement, a bilateral agreement. It proves that, of course, the government are in the front line in this fighting, in this struggle against climate change, but we cannot ignore that there are also other stakeholders, such as private companies, industries, but also the civil society, individuals at individual scale level. Everyone has a role to play in promoting a new model, low carbon economy and society. So it's we cannot change it overnight. It will take a time, and we are, France, rather optimistic. It is possible if we manage to mobilize all the goodwill of the international community, all the stakeholders. Our presidency, as of the COP21, will be to sensitize everyone, to have everyone on board. That's the spirit, the mind of our chairmanship. We want to conduct a very transparent, inclusive chairmanship, to increase this goodwill, to find compromises, to build a consensus, to go forward. That's why we want to talk to everyone. Yes,
very good.
I mean, having a lot of countries for this particular conference, and you said it's very crucial this year in Paris. But how do you come about to agreement to move forward from the different countries will have different rates when it comes to climate change or global warming, even greenhouse gas emissions?
Yes, it's true. We have many still today divergences on discrepancy on the different national positions. That's why we have chosen to implement a methodology which aims at gathering everyone much before the Paris conference. We have organized over the last few months many meetings, preparatory meetings, informal consultations at ministerial levels to prepare the text. We have a more formal official process within the United Nations. It's called the ADP session. It's the ad hoc working group of the Durban platform, which they meet on every 2 or 3 months to prepare a text. We have a new text now, so there has been some progress. You know, at the beginning we had a very long draft agreement, 80 pages. Now it has been reduced to 20. Yes, so it's more. We have to reduce the size to be more relevant and to.
What did you take out exactly? What did you take out from that 80 pages until you reduce it to 20?
It was you see a collection of national propositions. Sometimes redundant. Sometimes it was repeating what was said written elsewhere. We have streamlined the text, rationalized it to be more, more efficient, more effective. We have to. So it was very technical work. We had achieved some progress, but we will keep on listening to every partners, every stakeholders to find. To build a consensus. It is not easy, I must admit. It will success is not guaranteed. It will be challenging. We know there are still some difficulties, but by talking to everyone, we try to dispel some fears, some misunderstanding. We have to build confidence and trust in this process, because in the past it was not already the case. There were strong divides. So that's why that's the mind, the goal of our
We'll talk more about that after this break.
Sure. Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, welcome back. This is Grace.
And of course, you're still with us. And Damien, Syed, the First Secretary of the Embassy of France in Malaysia. So, talking about climate change, earlier on you described briefly about the Conference of Paris. Tell us more detail about it, because you mentioned off air that there are 4 main pillars that the conference will be focusing on.
Yeah, it's true. We have 4 pillars for this Paris conference. We are very committed to making this conference a success, and these 4 pillars are all very important. The first one is the agreement in itself. We want a universal agreement. So to have all the 195 countries on board, it is very important. It must be ambitious and legally binding. So we are working on this text already, as I mentioned before. The second pillar is the contribution of each country. Every country, developing countries, have to present its, as we say in the COP terminology, it's intended nationally determined contribution. It is a contribution which will show the efforts, the measures planned by every state to tackle the issue of climate change. It will include mitigation measures. Mitigation is how to reduce the emissions of CO2, and adaptation. Adaptation is another very important aspect. Adaptation is how can we increase the resilience of the states in front of the effects of climate change that are already being felt. This how to face this already important impact of climate change. So by developing new technologies and so on. That's what we call adaptation. The third pillar is the finance aspect, the financial component.
That would be the hardest one.
Yes.
The financing part.
Maybe one of the most challenging part. We have already a green fund. It is based in Korea. It is.
What is the green fund? Maybe just briefly explain.
Yes. It is with contributions from developed countries. The goal is to finance transfer of technologies to developing countries. So it's the goal is very ambitious. We have committed to have 100 billion in 2020 every year to finance new technologies in developing countries. So every developed countries has already announced some contribution and fundings. France, for instance, has committed to give $1 billion to this green fund.
Only developed countries. What about emerging countries like China and India? Because I mean they are quite a I would say an economic player, but are they also as committed as developed countries?
They are moving in the right direction, but since today the framework is still the Kyoto Protocol, they have not committed on the financial field. In the financial field, only developed countries have so far.
But the Paris conference, will they pull together China and India and maybe Brazil as well and Russia to participate?
Yes, exactly. We hope and we will try our best to have all these important countries on board and to take commitments actions against climate change. That's really what the COP21 is about. It's to have everyone on board. So the Green Fund is from public fundings, but also private. We try to encourage private investors to contribute to this Green Fund.
Right.
So you see, it's this aspect is of course essential, and it will be the third pillar of the COP21. And the last one is to have non-state actors on board as well. We want to have actions from everyone, all the stakeholders, namely the companies, private sectors, businessmen, but also NGOs, academics, the civil society, individuals. All of them will be encouraged to take actions, to announce commitments, to contribute on their part to the reduction of carbon emission. So there will be a dedicated space in Paris during the Paris conference. It's a very huge conference. It's the biggest international event
probably since Kyoto Protocol.
And the biggest one organized in France ever. Never before, because we are expecting 40,000 people to attend this conference. So we have to prepare to lay the groundwork and to have some capabilities to host this event, to have also in mind the accessibility for everyone, security, it's accommodation. It will be from the logistical point of view. It's very also
very challenging,
and that's why it's of course a lot of work. But we are working not alone.
Ideally, what's the outcome that at least from the French government or from the organizer of the COP21 would want out of this, ideally?
Of course, the Paris conference should lay the ground for a new period of commitments. So it will be the beginning of a new process. It will not be an end in itself. The Paris conference, if we are successful, we will have an agreement, a text,
and everyone would probably sign it.
Yes, everyone, and there will be this agreement will be regularly reviewed. Maybe it can be adjusted later in the next few years. It can be adapted to the evolution. It can be reassessed, and also the national contributions of every state will be linked to this agreement. And these contributions will also be assessed regularly to verify if we manage to reach our main target. Paris Conference intends to find an agreement to limit global warming to less than 2 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. Over 2 degrees Celsius, the impact would be not manageable. It would be a disaster for the Earth. It would. So you see, that's why the Paris Conference is a turning point. It's very critical. We have to prepare it to succeed, because as the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, said last year, there is no plan B, because there is no planet B.
And we are experiencing right now, right? Climate change.
For sure.
I mean, just talk about Southeast Asia. We have extreme climates happening just by this year. Several floods, massive floods, and probably one of the worst in history happening in countries like Myanmar, Malaysia, even the Philippines and Indonesia. So it's definitely one of the area that I totally agree with Ban Ki-moon that there's no plan B.
We shouldn't miss this occasion because it could be one of the last one. If the Paris conference fails, it would be depressing and it could discourage all the goodwill of people who want to limit climate change, climate disruption. It would be a catastrophe, I think, because it would be difficult to find a new momentum. Now we have a very positive context. We had very recently an encyclical from Pope Francis on climate change. Yes, we had different announcements from different countries: China, United States, Europe has also strongly committed to fighting climate change. We have a package, energy and climate package, which it means it intends to reduce the European emissions by 40% in 2030, and to cut by half our energy consumption in 2050. And to encourage renewable energy in our energy mix. We have different measures to encourage a transition toward a low carbon economy. It is already implemented in Europe, and we hope it can help. It can encourage other countries, other regions in the world to emulate, to follow this path, and it would be a positive circle. That's really the idea.
That's great.
It's very interesting because Paris will have this huge scale conference when it comes to climate change, all sorts of effects. But then when you think about it, climate change is not about only about the carbon emission or the weather. It also affects the health and also agriculture side as well, if you think about it. So if the conference goes successful, then of course the human beings here on earth, we will have a better lifestyle for sure. But then my question here is, having this very huge scale in France, and also having everyone, you said NGOs from all these different parties here to join this conference. You mentioned a challenging part, but wouldn't it be challenging to implement and executing the plans? Because would you have a different sort of document to different organizations to approach them, or how will it be?
Yes, it's actually it's a global campaign against climate change. As I said, we want to have an inclusive process. That's why we try to reach out every stakeholders. For my part, at the embassy, I am in regular contact with the Malaysian authorities, the Malaysian ministries. You see, of course, the Natural Resources and Environment Ministry, but also the Foreign Affairs Ministry. You also have the KETA Energy Ministry, the EPU, also for the planification unit, economic planification unit, but in addition, our embassy, in its efforts to increase awareness around climate change, we meet with NGOs. There is a very dynamic civil society in Malaysia. It's impressive. The individuals, Malaysians, are interested in this area. So we meet this Malaysian NGO, civil society. We are also in contact with some private companies who can contribute to this new model in the sector of energy, in the sector of buildings, in the sector of transport, to promote sustainable development. So we have different documents, but it's a more general effort to work with them, to exchange ideas, to get their feedback, their input on to have some ideas. It will contribute to the success of Paris, especially these 4 pillars I mentioned, to have everyone on board, and also non-state actors, not only government, but civil society, also private
influential
companies.
people, like we mentioned Pope Francis. Yeah, in a way.
Yes.
I think.
And also the local authorities, the regions, cities, municipalities are also important.
Mayors and local councils and all that.
Because it starts at the local level.
That's very interesting for you to mention that. I think we'll take another short break. When we return, we'll talk more about the ASEAN and also Malaysia's commitment towards climate change.
Monday Morning Matters
Perspectives
from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Welcome back. This is Grace.
And of course, you're still with Damien, Syed, First Secretary of Embassy of France in Malaysia. So we discussed a lot about the conference in Paris, and it's definitely a great challenge to move all the countries forward. But let's just focus on Southeast Asia and in particular Malaysia. I think commitment from Southeast Asia is still, I think, very much not as encouraging compared to developed countries or compared to other continent, but there are some promising bits. One of the fact that we cannot avoid in Malaysia, we are one of the largest energy consumers, probably in Southeast Asia, if I'm not mistaken. And you mentioned that 1% of the global energy consumption is from Malaysia.
Emissions, carbon emissions.
Carbon emissions.
Yes, it's true, because it's normal.
What did we do?
The stature, the Malaysia is playing an increasing role in the international economy. It is rapidly developing. It will become in 2020 a high-level income economy. So it is, of course, it is not a surprise that Malaysian emissions have increased over the last few years. But we are very happy to see that Malaysia has taken measures to tackle this issue. Malaysian Prime Minister in 29 in Copenhagen announced that Malaysia would reduce its carbon intensity. It means emissions related to the GDP. It was announced to reduce by 40% its carbon intensity in 2030. And last year, in last September, your Prime Minister announced that Malaysia has already cut by 33% its carbon intensity, and so it was on track to reach this goal of 40%. And in addition, Malaysia has also announced that it would increase the part of its renewable energy in its energy mix. It is quite low today, less than 3% in the energy mix, but it should gradually increase. So we have seen the new 11th plan, Malaysia's 11th plan, and green growth is really at the core of this document. There is two chapters on sustainable development and green growth. So it's we can see Malaysia is really keen to tackle.
That's in Malaysia's policy document, but in terms of numbers, Malaysia promised to reduce to what amount of carbon?
I have not the specific figures in mind. There are some numbers,
but what is expected of Malaysia?
Actually, now today we are waiting for the national contribution of Malaysia ahead of the Paris conference. It is due to be presented by the end of September. So we know there is interagencies process, consultation, exchanges between the ministries, the agencies, and it is under elaboration. And according to the NRE, to the Environment Ministry, which has the lead of this process, it should be ready in late September. So it would be very interesting to look at what is in this document. It will sum up the principal measures, actions taken by Malaysia in the next few years to tackle the issue. So maybe there will be new announcements. We hope so. We would like to see Malaysia have a very ambitious stand on climate change. We need the Malaysian contribution.
Right.
We need an ambitious and strong commitment of your country. That's why we fingers crossed it would be up up to the expectations. But for now, I cannot tell you more because it is a ongoing process. But I look forward to discovering the INDC intended national contribution of Malaysia, and to be very it could be a very essential moment for the next few years. So, there are many initiatives also taken at local level in Malaysia, in different states. You have some incentives to encourage.
I think more like changing habits,
Yes.
like not using plastic bags on certain days,
Exactly.
and try to separate the trash into different.
To sort
to sort it
garbage,
out,
yes,
yeah.
different dustbin.
Yeah.
It's true. It helps.
Yeah.
There are some also subsidies from the authorities to encourage private companies to reduce their own emission. It's called a feed-in tariff. Some financial assistance for equipment, for new technologies. It is really a central principle of the 11th plan, green growth. So we welcome a lot on this commitment, and we hope it will pave the way to the reduction of emissions in the next few years, hopefully.
Well, we talk about Malaysia here. I mean, of course, we talked about how people, some organizations, they have started already separating the trash bins. Also, in Penang, they've already announced on Saturday, every Saturday, we don't use plastic bags.
KL as well.
Yeah, and KL, finally, they've accepted, and then they've been educating people as well. Otherwise, they have to pay for plastic bag if they want to use it. But other than that, there are so many other things that we can do. But then I believe that it starts from the education, you see, from high school or even the younger generations. Because if you look at the situation in Malaysia specifically, organizations started, and then a few other, like perhaps the companies have started, doing to contribute to this climate change. However, my question here is, where is any sort of activities going on among the students level or college? Where is the whole educational information that are provided when it comes to climate change?
It's interesting because we have seen our embassy. We have strong cooperation with Malaysian universities, higher education university.
In fact, recently you have a forum in one of the local universities, right?
Yes, exactly. In June, we have organized in UKM a climate day, climate diplomacy day with other European ambassadors to reach out to sensitize and with Malaysian students. And it is true. We have seen that there are in several departments, scientific department, efforts to focus more on new technologies, solar, hydro, electricity, yes, also wind energy. Also, it's very important for the future because, as you know, Malaysia today relies a lot on gas and hydro, oil also. It's normal, it's the economy of Malaysia, but it will not last forever. And so Malaysia is preparing the time after gas, and new other alternatives are possible. And this renewable energy you have also other options such as nuclear energy. It is more sensitive because the public opinion, generally speaking, is quite there is a mistrust, and sometimes they are not so confident. But a nuclear technology, well monitored with strictly security rules, the good maintenance system, expertise, skillful management. It's possible to maybe in the future envisage that Malaysia embrace also nuclear, because it's very low carbon source of energy. But so in the education area, there is very high level expertise already in the universities, and France as a scientific cooperation with these universities.
All right.
That's amazing. Awareness not just on the policy level, but also on the grassroots level, especially focusing on the younger generation. Besides awareness, I want to expand the discussion on the ASEAN level. As we all know, the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting concluded in the month of August. But it seems like on the regional level, climate change hasn't been seen as a really a hard-hitting issue. It hasn't been highlighted as much compared to the issue of South China Sea
or
Rohingya or any other issue that is regional related. Why climate change hasn't been such a huge concern?
It has been addressed, but yes, not to a very large extent. It has been mentioned in the communiqué, the final statement of the meeting. Your foreign minister highlighted it was raised with his partners, among all other global issues, but environment, climate change, and how to face the risk of natural catastrophe, natural disaster. It was addressed, but of course the substance it was not so much elaborated and developed. But we have been told that ASEAN under the Malaysian chairmanship could adopt a statement before the Paris conference on climate change. So maybe during the summit to be held in Malaysia in November. So it should be on the agenda. So it's very important. But we know we are confident because ASEAN governments are aware of the importance of climate change, because the region is vulnerable to this threat. You have seen over the last few months real disruption of the climate. You mentioned the huge floods. You had very heavy storms. You had extreme drought also, as well as rising of the sea. You mentioned the Rohingya people. It's interesting because they come from Myanmar, also from Bangladesh. People of this region are threatened by the rising sea, especially Bangladesh. Many Bangladeshi people come to Malaysia, and they will come in bigger number in the next few years if we don't limit global warming, because 70% of the territory of Bangladesh is prone to floods. So if the sea rises, these people will come mainly.
And then you
Malaysia.
will have security issues and
tensions,
and you will have a vicious cycle. And for ASEAN, you want to worry about larger issue, not issue that you can solve it if the governments have greater commitment. So climate change is not just talking about saving the environment. It's all about it's a vicious cycle. If you don't talk about climate change, you will have other problems that is the result of climate change as well.
Absolutely. As you underline, it is a cross-cutting issue. It covers a lot of questions related to security, to economy, to the society, the way of life, and also security is very important. There is a strong link between climate disruption and security around the world. We have seen in many regions trouble, disturbances, some clashes because of the change of the climate, the access to drinking water, access to resources. It has really sometimes changed the balance in many regions. So we have to fight climate disruption now, because otherwise it could be too late.
That's true. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you.